Welcome to the Vault. Happy Christmas Eve. I had no plans to do a live stream today because it is the holidays, but since there is always extreme info being uploaded pertaining to the Idaho 4 slangs, I felt I had to do this live stream due to the new information that has been broadcasted. The Rideshare driver has come forward to give his account of that night taking the two girls home. And also a TikToker is being sued by a University of Idaho professor asking for a cease and desist order against the said person because of defamation and derogatory statements made about her, implicating her in this crime as the murderer. Thank you for joining me. Happy holidays. Please be safe and stay warm. Thank you. First source is News Nation, and the other sources pertaining to the information is also News Nation. Thank you.
I don't think I have to remind you, it has been 40 days since those kids were killed at that home on King Road. And tonight we're dissecting this case, what we know, and how police may actually be moving forward. Just ahead, some of the top homicide detectives in the business of solving murders are going to join us. Plus, with just one full day left until Christmas, we are going to be honoring those lives lost on King Road. But first, one method that detectives use to solve a crime is to look back over all of their notes for something that may see differently now. They might just notice it a little differently now with the passage of time. And so we have done the same thing, and we've compiled this case for you from start to finish.
The facts of the case that we know right now. We know these homicides occurred in the early morning hours of Sunday, November 13th. Around noon, Moscow officers received a call of an unconscious person. Officers discovered the bodies of Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Yonkavs inside the residence on King Road.
Just weeks ago, the five roommates were getting into the festive spirit, impersonating one another and posting the videos to TikTok.
Get out here. You seriously gotta get out.
But three of the five were killed: Madison Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, and Xana Kernodle. Kernodle's boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, spent the night and was also murdered. Investigators say they were all likely stabbed in their sleep. Two roommates apparently slept through the whole ordeal, according to officials. Upon waking up the next morning, they first called their friends over to the house for help, believing one of the victims had just passed out. Then they called 911.
At this crime scene, we collected 103 pieces of individual evidence. We took approximately 4,000 photographs. We've conducted multiple 3D scans of the residence, and we have hundreds of hours used by technicians and investigators, including our forensics team and detectives from multiple agencies.
Police saying today that the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students is progressing. Law enforcement conducting 150 interviews and processing more than 1,000 tips. Among them, that 21-year-old Kaylee Gonsalves had a stalker.
When I spoke to the prosecutor, he was very clear with me that they still have no suspects in this case.
Are there persons of interest and people that the investigators are looking at?
I think it's fair to say that there have been people of interest to the investigators, and everyone that they've identified so far, they've been able to exonerate, perhaps exonerate isn't the best word, but they've been able to eliminate them as being an actual suspect.
An emotional vigil remembering the University of Idaho murder victims. With the killer still on the loose, security was tight with metal detectors and police closely watching from the ground and from balconies inside the arena. The parents of the victims are distraught.
I would like to start by saying my name is Stacy Chapin. I'm Ethan's mom. The circumstances that bring us here tonight, they're terrible. The hardest part, we cannot change the outcome.
This morning, there's new information that could help solve the murders of 4 college students in Moscow, Idaho. Police are looking for a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra just like this, but we don't know the license plate number. Investigators believe the driver was near the crime scene on November 13th, and they think the driver could have critical information about the case.
The tips and leads have just
shown us that that car was there in that immediate area. So whoever was in that car may know who might have owned that car. Any of that information is extremely valuable to us right now because it could be really significant in solving this case.
Kaylee Gonsalves was supposed to be among those in caps and gowns today, including many fellow members of the Greek system.
I'm really glad that you're feeling like talk them up, especially because she's supposed to be here. So I'm just thinking about her.
It is eerily quiet at the University of Idaho. With graduation over and most finals moved online, there are almost no students on campus. 1 month after the brutal murder of 4 students, and their families are anxious for any information. Victim Kaylee Gonsalves' parents met with the investigators just yesterday, according to their attorney.
Have you or the family received any new updates on the investigation?
Well, part of our delay was we met with the investigators yesterday. The theme of the meeting was 2 things, was accountability and communication.
Attorney Shannon Gray says the family wants a more consistent stream of information from police. He says most of their questions about the investigation have still gone unanswered, but they are hopeful police are doing the right things.
Hard to imagine what those families are going through, not only losing loved ones, but also just the frustration and anger that a suspect has still not been caught more than 1 month after the murders. As for that white car seen on video, it's grainy video. It's hard to tell whether that is actually even the model of the car the police are looking for.
And we've said all along that we need people to be vigilant. We need people to pay attention because we're not sure exactly where the individual is.
Thank you for watching. Go to NewsNation now.
News Nation is the source. This is a recap of the investigation into the Idaho force slangs. A Hyundai Elantra was introduced into the case a few weeks ago. One was spotted in Oregon, but that owner of the car has been identified and has no relation to the case. 3D scans of the rooms, house conducted, which I was curious about that, and that has been mentioned here in this commentary. You also see that in the video, please go to my community board for the said information, that the officers were in attendance at the memorial at the university, and they were in the top balcony watching the crowd below, which I did not know that. This is my first time hearing of this said information, that they were high in the stands watching. So that's very interesting information as well. Did they notice anything out of sorts? A lot of people in the room. So who's to say? A very diabolical case with no answers. And perhaps law enforcement knows more than what we are assuming, some of us. There have been many criticisms against Moscow Police Department. They feel like they are adequate to handle the case. The state police, FBI, are involved in this case, and they were brought day 1, day 2 of this investigation. Where is the killer? Who is the killer? Many accusations against said parties as well has come forward by many people in social media and just the viewing audience. And it has caused a ruckus and possibly can endanger the life of the said person. And I don't think many people are realizing that. As I said, you're entitled to your interpretation of any type of information that you get via the news or the street. But as one man said last night, once you repeat it publicly, it's different than talking behind closed doors. And I don't think many people realize that. So a lot of information has come out, which some of it really isn't factual. The only thing that we have so far is that they're looking for a white Elantra. That's it. Everything else has been rumor, innuendo, speculations, as I said. Ongoing investigation. Praying for answers. It is the holidays. Tomorrow is Christmas. And 4 families will not have their children to share the holidays with or any other day. And this is truly sad. I'm going to bring you more information pertaining to Xana Kernodle News Nation is also the source of this information that I'm going to bring to you. One second. Well, it's all of them, excuse me. Xana, Ethan, Kaylee, and Maddie. Forgive me. This is a tribute to the 4 slain students.
I'll tell you the same thing. To know her was to love her. Her love for life and everyone in it was so inspiring. She made it a priority to make everyone feel so important and so loved.
There was never a day that she didn't want to race her brother because she was determined that girls were faster than boys. Or that she didn't want to go bug her little sisters.
Favorite memory for me was watching the game with her. And every time the Steelers scored, I'd pick her up and we sit there, hold her high in the air.
I didn't really realize that I was in love with Maddie until the summer of 2020. We went to McCall and spent a lot of time on the water. We floated the river and just hung out every chance we got.
They went to other countries together. Carriage went to Hawaii together. We took them to Mexico together. They went to college together. They went to high school together. They lived in their own apartment together. They were sisters.
She was so positive and lighthearted and understood the gift of life more than anyone I know. I remember her getting so mad at me for caring about the little things that didn't matter. She would always tell me she wouldn't know what to do without me, and now I have to live this life without her.
And she taught me a lot of stuff. She taught me how to be a dad. And I didn't know that until she was gone, you know?
Xana, you will not be forgotten. You have impacted so many lives and have given people so much love. I hope I can make you proud and try to leave an impact on this world and on people like you did.
He had such an infectious smile and a charismatic personality. And if you knew anything about Xana as well, they were very similar in how they acted together.
They were always so happy, and the way she would talk and smile about him is something I've never seen her do before. She truly loved him so much, and I know he had so much love for her.
We are eternally grateful that we spent so much time with him. And I want to remind you that that's the most important message that we have for you and your families, is to make sure that you spend as much time as possible with those people, because time is precious and it's something you can't get back.
Thank you for watching.
News Nation is the source. Thank you for joining me. When you listen to this, it puts everything into perspective of what the focus should be pertaining to this investigation. 4 lives honored here in this presentation, and 4 lives brutally taken from the earth by a mad person who had no regard for life. And that's what's most important, is that these children existed, and they existed to their families. And as you heard here, when their relatives' parents spoke at the memorial, the university, they gave you a glimpse into the lives and their perspectives of their children, sister. It's tragic. And I think many people should listen to those words so you can understand that these people are no longer living, and they meant something to someone else, to their families, to their friends. And all the things that have transpired thereafter is bad, despicable, because in the end, they are human beings. We did not know them. We do not know them. And things have gotten out of control with social media. everyone is entitled to his or her opinion pertaining to any given situation, true crime, but when you throw out accusations against another human being as if it is factual, you know that's wrong. I've made my own commentary pertaining to true crime, but I usually wait until law enforcement brings forward a suspect in order to just go ham on the person and say, yes, he or she did this or that to their child or spouse, lover, mate, whomever. And I have had to publicly apologize to a young lady who I thought possibly killed her mother with the Debbie Collier case. And some still don't believe that that woman took the life. Some people believe she took the life of her own mother due to her grainy past. But law enforcement says the mother killed herself. So I didn't have any problem with saying my assumptions or assertions, speculations were wrong. And that is why I have not made any allegation against any person in this case, because as I've said before, I do not know these kids. No information has really come forward for me to say either way who a suspect is, and I won't. And I won't entertain it until law enforcement brings forward a suspect or person of interest that they believe committed this atrocious act against 4 individuals. I will now bring you information pertaining to University of Idaho professor who has gotten a cease and desist order against a TikToker. An African-American woman has brought forward heinous allegations that this woman, a Caucasian female, is in this case by way of murder. Or she's accusing her of getting in cahoots with someone to murder the kids. Kaylee is the identifying target from her speculations. This case has gotten out of control with the innuendos. And really, some people need to stop and think when you start throwing the daggers, of course, at who you think did it. You don't know these kids. You don't know anything about them. There's 4 people. So you don't know anything about them. You don't know what they've been doing. You have no idea what is going on with them to say who did something. And as you heard here, the people who have been talked to so far have been cleared. That's not to say that they're not involved. It's just to say law enforcement has spoken with these people and cleared them for now. But every day changing a victim as a suspect to say he did it, she did it, they did it. It's outlandish. And some of you are riding on this bullshit. Excuse my language. But I'm going to say that because it's ridiculous. You change the narrative every day. You change the suspect every day. You don't know the kids. It is alleged that Kaylee had a stalker. I sat and listened to the conversation about the vape shop last night, saying, well, maybe she did have one. No information has been brought forward to prove she has one, so it's either one. She knows who the stalker is, or she did at that time, let's say, but never revealed his name to other parties. Maybe the people that knew are the ones who are deceased. Or she was receiving messages from an unidentified person, fake profile perhaps, sending messages through TikTok, IG, Facebook. I don't know. But the fact that the vape shop said the girls came in together because of Kaylee saying she had a stalker, maybe there is some truth to it. I don't know. See, that's the whole point of this story. You can't prove anything to ask the people involved because they are not alive. Don't you find that interesting? That's why I always tell you to think about the information given to you. What are the odds that the people that would know who the stalker is, let's say there is a stalker. The stalker is the killer. Then what are the odds that the people who hold the secret, they're all dead? Something to think about. But so far, law enforcement has not identified a stalker. And if they did, what were they going to say to the general public? Yes, we've identified him. The next thing you know, somebody's going to say, well, who is he? Then the family's going to say, who is he? And then how's that going to work if indeed they think he did it? Naturally, they're not going to want to tell the public because it's an early investigation and they want to watch the person, get their data, get their phone records, see what they were doing, GPS tracking, so on and so forth. I'm going to bring you information pertaining to the excessive, ridiculous stalking of people in this case. Law and Crime Network is the source for this information pertaining to the university professor suing a TikToker. Thank you for your time. Merry Christmas to everybody in the viewing audience.
The killer, she's not going to live up to her promises for him.
A TikToker and self-proclaimed internet sleuth sued for defamation after she repeatedly claims a University of Idaho history professor is responsible for the murders of 4 students. So how strong is this professor's case? I'm Anjanette Levy, and welcome to Law and Crime Sidebar Podcast. Imagine waking up one day and finding out that there's a TikTok page basically dedicated to calling you a murderer. That happened to Professor Rebecca Schofield of the University of Idaho. She is a history professor there, and Schofield is suing a woman named Ashley Gillard for defamation after Gillard posted more than 20 videos accusing Schofield of taking part in the murders and having a relationship with one of the victims. Maddie Mogan, Kelly Gonsalves, Xana Cornodal, and Ethan Chapin were all murdered in an off-campus home on November 13th. Schofield says, to her knowledge, she's never met any of these students, and she's never had any of them in her history classes. Right after the murders, Ashley Gillard started posting TikTok videos about Professor Schofield, claiming that she partnered with someone else to commit these murders. According to Schofield's lawsuit, her lawyer sent 2 cease and desist letters to Gillard, but she didn't stop posting about her and claiming that the professor was involved in the murders. Kermit Roosevelt is a constitutional law expert and a professor at the Penn Law School at the University of Pennsylvania, and he's also the author of The Nation That Never Was, Reconstructing America's Story. Professor Roosevelt, welcome to Sidebar. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me.
What are your thoughts as you look through the TikTok videos that you're seeing on this woman's page?
Well, my main thought is something has gone wrong here. This is a bad situation. It's bad for the professor who's having his accusations made against her. It's also bad for the person who's making the accusations, who's subjecting herself to significant legal exposure. So it suggests to me that social media has introduced new dangers in our society, and we should maybe be thinking about ways to mitigate those.
I find that to be an interesting point because I think people don't understand or may not realize, or in some cases may not care, that what you say on social media is the same as you writing it in the newspaper. It's the same as you posting it
Very true.
Anywhere or speaking it. This is a forum where somebody's reputation can be damaged. It's almost like TikTok to me is the wild, wild west here. People have gone crazy with this case. Talk to me a little bit about what your responsibilities are as anyone posting on social media.
Well, as you said, it's the same. So communication over social media, communication over the internet, that's real. And I think probably everyone is familiar with the phenomenon where people are less inhibited posting online. They are meaner than they would be normally. They're more extreme. And if you're anonymous and you're just flaming people anonymously, then I guess it's limited. And the harm that can follow is limited. But if you're doing this publicly and you're disseminating your speech to millions of people, potentially, you could be causing massive reputational harm. And the things that are being said on these TikToks are certainly defamatory. There are allegations of involvement in a crime and allegations of professional misconduct. So there's a potential for very serious reputational harm. And then, as I said, you can't just say that about someone if it's not true, and I've no evidence suggesting it is true. So there's very significant potential defamation liability for the speaker here too.
I think it's important that we note this isn't just accusing Professor Schofield of murder.
Yes.
She is saying that she was romantically involved with one of the victims. Professor Schofield says that's not true. I've never met these people. To my knowledge, I've never met them. I've never met them in my history classes. What does the professor have to prove here in order to win this case?
Well, this is a matter of public concern. Obviously, the public is very interested in this case. So it's not the best case for a defamation claim. But Professor Schofield is a private individual. She hasn't inserted herself into this controversy. She's not a public figure. So constitutionally speaking, she could recover on a mere showing of negligence. So she has to show that the statements are false, that they are defamatory, they injure her reputation, and that the speaker was negligent in not learning that they were false and in expressing them anyway.
Why is Aaron happy? Well,
sorry about that intermission. Thank you for joining me. Very dicey information.
What's interesting about this is that there are commenters on some of these videos who say, where are you coming up with this stuff? And it almost seems like this Ashley is obsessed with this idea, and she is convinced that it's true. In my viewing of some of these TikToks, I'm astounded at how many there are, and the ways she's discussing this and justifying her position. And I wanted to ask you too, you were saying that the professor is a private individual, which I find interesting, because if she were a public figure, it would be a higher bar, of course. You'd have to prove actual malice, but there's no argument to be made as a university professor that you are in some way, shape, or form a public figure.
No, she's not a general public figure, and she's not a limited purpose public figure either. So if she had inserted herself into this controversy and said, I know who the murderer is, and then someone else had said, actually, I think it's you, maybe she'd be a public figure for that purpose. But as far as I know, she was just trying to stay out of this. She didn't have anything to do with it. So you can't reach out and take a private individual and thrust them into the limelight against their wishes without them doing anything and then say they're a public figure. So she has all of the ordinary protections according to private individuals.
We've reached out to Ashley Gillard, and as of this recording, we haven't yet heard back from her. I also reached out to Professor Schofield directly, and her lawyer sent a statement. I want to put that up on the screen. It says, the statements made about Professor Schofield are false, plain and simple. What's even worse is that these untrue statements create safety issues for the professor and her family. They also further compound the trauma that the families of the victims are experiencing and undermine law enforcement efforts to find the people responsible. In order to provide answers to the families and the public, Professor Schofield twice sent cease and desist letters to Ms. Gillard, but Ms. Gillard has continued to make false statements knowing they are false. Thus, this lawsuit became necessary to protect Professor Schofield's safety and her reputation. What does this tell you that this Ashley is continuing to post even after receiving cease and desist letters?
Well, it seems to me that she's not acting very rationally, honestly. Because based on what I know, this seems like a very strong lawsuit, and refusing to comply with cease and desist letters puts her in a worse position. So it looks to me as though she is not calculating the costs and benefits to her of this behavior. And this is sort of the problem that I started out with. The thing about social media is it makes everyone a publisher. It makes everyone able potentially to reach a very wide audience. And we used to have gatekeepers. So I could have, 20 years ago, written an op-ed accusing some private individual of involvement in some notorious crime. Say the O.J. Simpson case, I could have said, this professor somewhere is the real killer. And I could have sent that out to the New York Times, but they never would have published it. So it never would have reached a lot of people, my own musings about the case. But now certain things go viral on TikTok, and it's hard to predict why. And someone coming up with accusations that don't really seem to have any foundation can suddenly reach millions of people.
I'm somewhat surprised that there hasn't been some type of criminal complaint taken here. This almost seems like it could reach the level of harassment. I don't know if you believe that, but it seems to me that this is harassing this professor.
Well, so I'm not sure exactly what the crime there would be, and there are significant free speech protections for even encouragement of illegal behavior as long as it's not imminent. So I think that's probably a harder road to go down than defamation. I mean, defamation just looks like a very strong case to me. Criminal liability, I think, would be harder. Now, sometimes you could get a restraining order.
That's an interesting point. It just seems to me that this is just really obviously crossed a line. And again, we reached out to Ashley and she hasn't yet responded to our request for comment. Professor, I want you to tell us, before we wrap up here, a little bit about your book, The Nation That Never Was, Reconstructing America's Story. What's it about?
Oh, thanks so much. Well, so it's about American identity and American values and really where they come from. And my basic point is we tell ourselves a story where our value of equality, really, which is sort of our central value, comes to us from the founding fathers. And it's there in 1776. And my argument is it's really not there in 1776. It comes to us mostly from abolitionists. And if we're looking for the historical moment that makes America, we should be looking at Reconstruction and the Civil War, not the Revolution and the 1787 Constitution.
Very interesting indeed. Well, Professor Roosevelt, any final thoughts on the lawsuit involving Professor Schofield?
Well, my final thought is it's a really sad situation for everyone involved. And without knowing more about why Ashley is doing this or what she's thinking, it's hard to say how much sympathy we should have for her. But there are people in the comments there saying, get yourself a lawyer, you're exposing yourself to ruinous liability. And I sort of feel like she is not a sophisticated actor with legal counsel who fully understands what she's getting into.
And I was actually wondering whether she might have some mental health issues and just looking at some of these videos too. So it would be wise for her to seek legal counsel for sure and stop posting these videos. Professor Kermit Roosevelt, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Law and Crime is the source of this information. If you need verification, all audio is in the YouTube queue and posted to my community board. Let me say this. This girl, female, accusing this professor of having involvement, one, with the victim, two, co-conspirator of murder of she and her friends, is outlandish. The accusation is no different than all of the Jacks and Pauls and Dons and people that some of you all have accused of being involved in the crime. And as I said, I have played my role in discussing true crime and giving my public opinion pertaining to who I think was involved in a crime. And yes, the person could have easily tried to do the same. Cease and desist against my commentary here on YouTube. This is why I said I am no different than anyone who is making allegations against someone or that can be sued. Thank you very much, TCE. So I guess this is a lesson learned for all people speaking publicly, whether you are a YouTuber, TikToker, podcaster, blogger, whichever appropriate title you want to give yourself. You have to be very careful the things that you post to social media. This is why Facebook has such strict rules pertaining to saying things about people, accusing them of crimes, allegations. Somebody flags your profile, and next thing you know, you're blocked on Facebook. And I'm assuming IG is the same. TikTok will probably follow suit, such as Twitter has. You cannot say someone is involved in a crime and you have no proof that they are involved. Yes, you're saying to yourself, I'm giving my opinion. This female appears to be mentally ill. I believe she just looked in the University of Idaho roster. Yes, I'm going to say this publicly. I believe you looked in the University of Idaho roster. You found an innocent person to accuse of having a sexual relationship and murder of one of the victims. And you are ridiculous. And you are sick. And this is why I can say what I'm saying. that this allegation is no different than when you say one of those boyfriends, ex-boyfriends did it. The Grubhub guy and the other Grubhub guy did it. Or you think whoever took them home in the car did it. This is why you got to stop. Because besides some of you giving your public opinion, you are literally dousing these people with gasoline. Oh, he did it, she did it, he did it. It's no different than this girl saying this professor did it. It's the same thing. And the only reason why people in the comment section, some are saying, oh, this sounds preposterous, is because you don't know the professor. Once again, like you don't know Jack, all those people. I don't even like saying their names because I don't need the static, because I'm not here for this nonsense. And I told you, I will never give an opinion of who I think did it because I can't, because I don't know the kids. I don't know all of their friends because it looked like all of the friends are dead. How about that? You hear it in their memorials. The people they hung with and liked are dead. 2 are living. Stay woke. See, you have to listen to the information. This girl is gone mentally. Now she's been served 2 warnings by an attorney for this professor. And guess she's still posting. So that means she doesn't give a damn, as you hear the commentator speaking in this video. Maybe she just don't care. Well, she doesn't care. Yes, well, as I said, we've all made commentary about people in storylines who we think may have killed someone. But now you see why when you do it publicly, it's different than if you're saying from behind closed doors. Publicly, social media, it's public. People watch YouTube all around the world. This is not just a Channel 5 network YouTube. This is the world. TikTok, the world. And it's an avenue to act a fool, talk crazy, be crazy, show the world you don't have no damn common sense, make up stuff about people, lie, it's all the same. And you have a extensive viewing audience, not just your neighbor, your friend, the guy at the lunch table, the world. But once again, the allegations made against this professor is no different than the people you all have accused that know the dead kids. It's the same. Hate to disappoint you. It is the same. You just want to now, some of you judge this chick. Why are you putting her out there? Well, when you look at it, one could say, well, why not? So let's argue that side. You all think these other kids killed them that know them. So what's the difference between this white woman who's older and a professional and a staff member? Because it doesn't sound right to you. Doesn't sound plausible that this woman had an affair with one of the kids, allegedly, and also conspired in a murder with one of the other people that you all think did it. But see, that's the whole point of the story. You don't know who did it. You don't know who murdered these kids. What sounds plausible to some of you is the inner circle, but you don't know how deep the inner circle goes. This is why you shouldn't be making allegations against people who've been picked out of photographs and videos. And now some of you, if we find out indeed the Grubhub guy has nothing to do with this, you douse that boy with gasoline, and then they release a video showing he was already walking down the street with them before they even got to the Grub bus. And I had a feeling when they released a whole video of about 4 hours on Jennifer Coffindaffer's Twitter account, my better half was telling me there's a reason this Grub bus video is showing the whole entire video. There's something to it. I tried watching it because it's so extensive. It's time consuming trying to figure out who got to the Grub bus first. I think they were trying to send you a message. You don't know what you're talking about. You're making up stuff against somebody when you don't know the situation. Maybe that was the purpose of the 4-hour video, is to show you they all showed up at the Grub bus together. Ding. Not he followed the girls and was stalking them allegedly. Because this is what happens when you don't know anything about the case. You don't know the victims. You don't know who they were talking to, who they were intermingling with before they got from point A to point B. And that's the problem with this story. And this chick who's throwing daggers at this professor, you're going to bring yourself all the way down to a low point for nothing. When you don't know these people, you don't know the kids, you don't know the professor, you don't know this other guy that you're implementing as a killer, you are just outrageous. And I think you're mentally ill. And I won't doubt that if this girl is doing this on purpose to get attention, to get TikTok views, or her ass is schizophrenic, or possibly both. So this is just ridiculous. And then I'm looking in the background. We're going to do you the way you're doing the professor and this other guy. In the background, you have a Christmas tree in the corner with nothing under it looks like. And really no decorations on the tree. Now, I could look and say, wow, is this tree for show in this TikTok video? How about that? The apartment has a lot of space in the background, so one could say, is your apartment or condo empty? Hell, did you just go find somebody's apartment to film a TikTok video in? Is that actually your place? You see, the dagger can be thrown back at this female who's accusing this professor of improprieties with a dead person and murder. See, the same could be done to you, sweetheart. Because I could go back and say, well, when did she start filming these TikTok videos? Oh, right before Christmas. So one could say, well, does she have a full Christmas tree decorated now? Or she just likes the Zen look of lights on the Christmas tree. See, anybody could chop up anything in the background. Isn't that what you all have been doing with the Grub Bus and all this other nonsense? Going through their IG pages and Facebook pages and TikTok pages, trying to see what you can find out. And some people agree, well, there's nothing wrong with people trying to help solve this crime and other crimes. And one YouTuber helped with the Gabby Petito case and blah, 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 blah. But there's a fine line in digging. Looking for clues and accusing people is two different things. Two different things. This is outrageous. And this girl, because I'm going to call her a girl because she's acting like a child. This girl with these accusations against this professor shows you why you don't need to publicly accuse people of crimes. This is a perfect example. Whether you've done it or not done it. Somebody could sue you for talking about them. Because you see in the news, daggers have been thrown against news reporters, even though they're just reporting the news, not giving their public opinion on what they think the allegation against you. But some people don't like to be talked about, period. But I always say, if you don't want to be in the news, don't make the news. That's common sense. You don't want someone accusing you of murder, sodomy, rape, whatever the allegation is, then don't do it. Don't go out here in the street acting a damn fool, and then somebody catches it on video, and then it gets shared around the world, and then now you're mad at everybody because you made the news. You made it to YouTube. Well, sit your ass down somewhere, and you don't have to worry about it. Well, Andre, that's why I'm saying I take full responsibility for my own commentary. And I naturally have made commentary that was negative of people because this is a commentary channel. But it does not mean that someone could not as well come after the queen for her commentary. So this is why in this case, I said I would not make accusations against anyone pertaining to the kids because, for one, I do not know them. Two, I do not know all of their friends. Three, the friends they had are dead. So therefore, I will be listening to he said and she said of who was a friend, not a friend, who somebody had a problem with. That's why I knew the list would be endless of possible suspects. And if you're speaking of someone that is random, all bets are off, because then that means the killer is anybody out here walking. And I don't have that kind of time to be deciphering through who I think the killer is. And some of you need to stop, because this isn't your standard case of trying to put together who killed the kids. You don't know the kids. You've only heard one accusation of a stalker. That could be anybody. She didn't give a name. She didn't tell her parents or her sister or her mother, the people who are living. You don't have anything to go on. They didn't tell the vape shop guy. Did they tell this alleged Adam guy or somebody else that's living? That's the point of the story. Somebody living has to come forward and say, yes, she, he, they told me the stalker is such and such. And then that information given to the police, and then the police follows on the information. But this mess with the professor and this TikToker is outrageous. And this chick needs to sit down somewhere and be quiet, because you are out. You're just gone off the rocker, man. You are gone. And I think you're ill, or you're doing this on purpose to get views and likes for TikTok. And if you're this sick, that you just go randomly pick up anybody out of the blue, out of a roster from a university, because that's where you did it. You went and looked her name up and just picked a person out. And this woman is telling the public, I don't know them, haven't dealt with them, and don't believe I've ever had them in my classes. And even if she did have one of them in her classes, how dare you accuse her of having an affair or some type of sexual relationship with one of the victims and conspiring to murder one of them. Just despicable. One moment, please. Thank you for joining me. This is The Vote. Thank you for joining me. We will see what happens with this cease and desist against this TikToker, if she will stop posting defamatory information against this professor. I believe the professor needs to go all the way with it, because this is possibly a lesson for all of us, that you cannot say derogatory things about people. And I'm a commentary channel. That means basically I wouldn't have a YouTube channel, because I give my opinion of the said information. And as I've always said, with true crime and any type of allegation about a person, everything's a version. So if somebody comes forward to say he, she, they did this to me, it's up to you to decide it's up to you if you think that happened to the person. No different if a person got up today and told you they went to the mall, they stayed there for 5 hours, they came home, they walked their dog. It's up to you to decide if what they told you is the truth. Same thing with true crime. It's up to you to decide if any allegation brought forward by somebody is the truth. If he or she did it, said it. They bring your personal interest. You're entitled to your opinion if you believe that person is involved in the crime. If they say they didn't do it, it's up to you to decide if you believe them or not. Everything's a version. That is the point of life. You are only worth your word. And right now, this girl's word ain't worth a pile of beans, because she's going to have to prove she knows this lady had a relationship with one of the victims and ordered a hit or conspired a murder of she and her friends. This is outrageous and it's despicable. And it gives us all pause to think. Sometimes you just can't say things about people that you do not know is factual in a public arena. And even if you say it behind closed doors, once it's repeated, it could also cause you harm. Because people have been murdered for the smallest of things. Stay woke. So imagine we don't know the reason these children were murdered. Imagine somebody finding you and killing you because of something that you said about them on TikTok, YouTube, the news, Facebook, IG, Twitter, Snapchat. Thank you for joining me. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $ Big Angie, 129 Cash App, all super stickers, chats are welcome during this live stream. That last information was by Law and Crime Network. I'm going to bring information from The Hill. Parents slam very poor police communications. Do you believe this was a bungled investigation? Thank you for joining me.
Idaho are seeking the public's help in identifying the occupants of a white Hyundai Elantra made between 2011 and 2013 and seen near the off-campus home where 4 University of Idaho students were murdered last month. Police say they could have critical information about the case.
New surveillance footage obtained by News Nation shows 2 of the victims walking in downtown Moscow with an unidentified man just hours before they were murdered. An attorney for the family of Kaylee Goncalves raised doubts last week over how Moscow police have conducted the investigation thus far. Let's watch.
Once again, we haven't gotten any information from the police. The communication has been very poor. It really continues to be poor. I've sent over a couple of questions over the last few days that still haven't gotten answered. The whole thing is trust us, trust us, trust us, and have faith in the investigation, or we're making these right decisions. Well, if you're missing out on video because you go in on the 22nd,
Joining us now with details into the investigation is News Nation senior national correspondent Brian Enton. Brian, great to have you with us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so tell us what the latest is. What is the new information with this, with the surveillance footage of the car, et cetera?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the basics sort of remain the same. Still no known suspect or persons of interest. Police are still staying very, very tight-lipped. They still continue to look for this Hyundai Elantra. At last check, there were 22,000 Hyundai Elantras in that time frame registered in both Idaho and Washington, and they're trying to go through every single one of those registrations. So it's obviously taking a really, really long time, even with the help of the FBI. So they're still asking the public for help. There was some surveillance video that came about from a gas station that shows a white car. We're not sure if that's the exact car that they're looking for. There's also a landlord near the house where the murders happened who I talked to, who says he picked up a light colored car around the time of the murders, right on a road near where the murders happened, that he also submitted that video surveillance to the authorities. He said that the FBI was trying to enhance his video. So behind the scenes, a lot happening, but they say they still haven't identified the actual car that they're looking for.
Yeah, and this speaks to, a question that I think so many people have had about this whole story, which is, there's surveillance, we're surveilled without our knowledge all the time. Everybody has security cameras. There's so much video footage everywhere. So the idea that, this could happen and would have just nothing whatsoever, no grainy or sketchy video footage of anyone near the house at that time always seemed baffling. So now it sounds like maybe they do have that kind of stuff, but they haven't been able to turn that into an actionable lead, even if they have had that information for some time. Or is it this is newly come to them because they're not being very transparent about when they got this surveillance footage.
Yeah, so the surveillance footage you're looking at right there, we obtained that over the weekend. That's video of Maddie and Kaylee walking in downtown Moscow just hours before the murders. And they're talking about a man named Adam, who we've come to find out is actually a bartender at one of the bars in town, and has apparently been cleared and is not a suspect right now, according to the lawyer for the Gonzalez family. So that video, we know that police had 2 or 3 days after the murders. We were just able to track it down over the weekend. So you make a good point. I mean, there's a lot of video that police have had that just hasn't been made public. Like I was mentioning, the one landlord who gave up video, that was also just a couple of days after the murder. So police have had it since then. So there's clearly a lot that they have that they haven't been sharing. But what's interesting is when they talk about the Hyundai Elantra, they released a stock photo. So it's just a generic photo of the Hyundai Elantra. They haven't actually released a photo of the actual car that they're looking for, which leads us to believe that they don't have the car on video, or at least they don't have a clear image of the car.
And my understanding was that, there was a lot of pushback. There was a lot of concern about this revelation, that they did in fact have some of this information, the video footage of the light colored car, and now this kind of stunning video from just hours before the murders took place, in which there was an unidentified man walking with these two young women. Not that he's necessarily a suspect, but it is a really stark contrast to the messaging that we heard in the weeks since the murders, which is that there was just absolutely nothing here. And part of what was defining the coverage of the story was how mysterious the circumstances of all of this were. The gap between that and what we're now seeing doesn't give a lot of confidence in the way that law enforcement is handling this case. And I saw specifically criticisms that if you're going to rely on the public's help to track down this vehicle, time is of the essence, and questions about why it was that the public wasn't made aware of the fact that they should be tracking down this Hyundai Elantra much sooner. Are those concerns that you've heard echoed from the family? The families of the
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Especially the Gonzalez family. Their attorney, even last night, again, was talking to me about how he is concerned with the police investigation right now. One of his big concerns is like the first 48 hours after the murders happened, because obviously now there's 60 FBI agents working the case. There's more than a dozen state detectives also helping Moscow PD, which is pretty small. But his concern is, right after it happened, those first 48 hours before all of those additional resources were able to come in, why didn't they do more? Why didn't they put out some kind of alert to the community? Hey, do you know of anyone in this small town who missed work, who, has injuries on their arms? Because obviously there were, that some of the victims fought back during the attack. He just feels like enough wasn't necessarily done early on, and that perhaps this, relatively small police department that hasn't dealt with a murder in 7 years. So in some ways, you can't really blame them. I mean, it's this beautiful, quiet, small town that doesn't really have much crime. But he's questioning, should they have handed things over much earlier to a federal agency that has more experience in this kind of thing.
My understanding, I believe since last we spoke with you, there was a bit of new information on the, without getting into the very gruesome details, the conditions they were found in. The two of the girls were actually found even in the same bed. They were very violent, very deep stab wounds, would not have been recoverable, might have been swifter kind of death situation. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so the reason that we're obviously interested in that, and you mentioned it's gruesome, you like to talk about it, especially because of what these families are going through, but it's because there's this whole question of who was the target. Was there a target? Is it possible, the victim with the most substantial wounds was the target of the killer? And we've learned through the Gonzalez family that they say their daughter had more serious stab wounds than her best friend Maddie, who she was sleeping in the same bed as. Does that mean that Kaylee was the target, or does it perhaps mean that she also woke up and was fighting back, and that's why she was having worse injuries. We really just don't know. We also don't really know how her injuries compare to the other two victims who were on the second floor. And again, that's another thing that the families are frustrated by is some of the communication. They've streamlined it now. The police are the ones doing most of the talking and releasing of information. But early on, you had the prosecutor talking, you had the coroner, who the family say was calling them directly and giving them information. And again, it's a small town. The coroner is a local attorney in town. They question, does she even have the expertise? Should she have been calling families and giving out information? A quadruple homicide like this, 4, college student stabbed. Again, a lot of people here are just questioning, are they really equipped to handle an investigation like this, something that would be serious in any big city or anywhere in the country, let alone, a very, very small, quiet town.
Brian, I also want to just ask you about this vape store owner who says that Kaylee had a stalker and that the girls walked in a group because they were afraid of her being targeted. What do you know about that claim?
Yeah, so I interviewed that vape store owner. According to him, Kaylee and Maddie would come into the vape store, pretty regularly. He said he had encountered them 6 or 7 times. So the store is not far from their home. And he says the last time that he spoke to the girls, it was about 3 weeks before the murders. And he says they came in as a big group and that they were discussing how they were in a group because Kaylee had a stalker and they were all sticking together to keep her safe. He didn't have a lot of specifics about, who the stalker might be, but it was certainly interesting considering this stalker, theory has come up over and over again. We know that he's spoken to police. Police actually came into his store looking for surveillance video at one point. So just another element to the mystery. But the bottom line is we still don't really know whether Kaylee had a stalker, and her family says that she never brought up a specific person to them, especially her sister, who she was super close to. They talked about everything. Her sister says if she really had a stalker, she likely would have, it would have come up on, they talked multiple times per day.
Brian Hinton, a guest on The Hill. If you need verification for the source, a lot to chop up there. Let's start with this investigation. FBI state police came in day 1, day 2. So one could say that it's not true that no one was called to help aid in this investigation if this Moscow needed help. Obviously, they needed help. They sought out the state police and the FBI. They came in day 1 and day 2. That has been said. Perhaps Mr. Gonsalves or other family members want them to take over the investigation, wanted them to take over from the beginning. So that's a difference. Because you have to have proof that, they did something inappropriate in the investigation. Maybe they're not doing what you want them to do. That doesn't mean that's necessarily mishandling of an investigation. The only people that know what's been mishandled are the people who are actually investigating this crime. They're at odds with one another because Mr. Gonsalves has spoken on things that possibly Moscow Police Department, district attorney, coroner, whoever did not want that information out, such as talking about the wounds. Maybe they didn't want that out, but the coroner had already spoken. The father saw his child, I'm assumingly, the entire body, because he had to claim the body. Somebody had to claim the body. So what is the deal with them? I think it's because he's spoken out. That's where the rift is between he and this department. He and the family have an issue about the alibis. Well, you should know they're not going to reveal that to the public, because just like you have cleared one of the boyfriends, ex-boyfriends, or whomever as a suspect, you've also cleared Adam as a suspect. Then that's no different than the police department saying, we've cleared people. What's the difference? So basically, you have to call a spade a spade. You have publicly spoken of 2 people that you feel had no involvement in the case, but yet you're not a police officer, you're not an investigator, state police or FBI. You're just the father, family members of the deceased, but you're not an investigator. You haven't checked data, GPS, eyewitness, CCTV. So when you get angry and say, well, the police cleared this one, and I want to know who their alibis are, That's not their job to give you that information about alibis. And you know that. And yes, you're angry. You have every right to be angry. Your child was brutally murdered. But you have to wait and let these people do their job. And I get a little sense from this lady who was speaking as a commentator, egging on the situation of discrepancies in them not handling this correctly. Well, as I said, day one and day two, FBI and state police were there. The only accusation anyone could bring forward against Moscow police would be the coroner's credentials to give out information publicly, number one. And number two, processing the scene when they got there. Understandably, there were a lot of people there. Do not know how many, because allegedly other students were called outside with the two remaining roommates. So you have to use deduction. How many people walked back into the house? Did any of those kids go back in? Which that would have contaminated the scene, number one. Did anybody walk around the house, touch anything? Ambulance workers, police, did they use appropriate protocol when they made it to the scene? Inside of the house, how many people were inside of the house walking around? Did they wear protective gear, suited up? See, that's when you can bring forth allegations that the case wasn't handled properly. You have to show, I've got proof to say this one did not use appropriate protocol when entering the house, sealing off the house, sealing off the outside of the house. The search wasn't broad enough from point A to point B, from this street to this yard to this yard. Bring forth the proof. This is an ongoing investigation. The police does not have to show anything, as they say in the street, show their hand, because there's a killer on the loose. And if I start talking and telling you every little detail about the case, then I'm letting the killer know that I possibly know who he is. And I have to have evidence against him in order to get an indictment for murder. I don't think people really understand how the law works. A person can look guilty, but I still have to have enough to seal an indictment. Not off TikTok videos and what Pookie Ray Ray said on TV and YouTube. I have to have proof. He, she, they did it. Possibly also a motive, because as they said, most members of a jury want a motive. That is the reason why some people walk, because they feel like the state didn't show motive, clear motive of why he, she, they would kill the person or kill their baby. Why we have one walking now, Casey Anthony. Prime example, because they didn't convince, obviously, 12 members that she did it. To them. Now, to some of us, we felt she was guilty. That is the point. Everybody's perception is different. State police, FBI are involved. As I've said on many commentaries in different chats on News Nation, the state and police and the FBI are involved. So wherever Moscow lacked the first few days, weeks, whatever, I refuse to believe the FBI do not know their job and are not adequately working, and also the state, because they are more trained. They are a national entity. They have the resources to do things in the case that Moscow would not have. And they can do the satellite checking, videos, forensics. And that's how we will catch the killer. This is how they will catch the killer. And I have faith that they will do all that they need. Some things I don't agree with is possibly releasing the scene. But you heard in my earlier commentary that 3D scanning was done of the rooms. So that means they've already taken a visual of everything in the room. But some still disagree. They shouldn't have cleared out the belongings from the victims of the house. And naturally, they wouldn't give them anything that was tainted with any type of blood or any other type of fluids. But some think items should remain inside. And as far as the video with the grub bus, maybe there was nothing there, and that's why law enforcement didn't release the video. And I get it. Some people feel like, well, we needed to see that they were alive, okay, wherever they were. But that's the whole point. The flip side is we don't know everywhere that they went. They also was at a bar where this Adam person was. You haven't gotten any footage from that. Why not? And I find that interesting that that video has not been released. The bar where they were. So you have to ask yourself, how many places did these young ladies go to? What happened in all the places that they went? Will we get a video of the bar scene with the girls inside of the bar? Will there be more revealing information from any other videos of where the young ladies were? And as you see now, the grub bus may possibly have been nothing. And that's why they didn't reveal a video of the grub bus. So you have to ask yourself also, when did they get the information about the grub bus? Early on, week 1, week 2? Who brought forward the information of the grub bus? One of the guys called them to tell him he was standing out there with the girls, the heavyset guy. They never responded, so he went down on his own. And naturally, they were probably overwhelmed with phone calls, so they didn't get back to him. I do not know. But he went down, told them he saw the girls, talked with them briefly, chatted, whatever. So far, I believe he's one of the people who have been cleared. Heavyset guy with the dark hair who's done also TikTok videos or social media videos. Then there's the other guy that everybody's been pointing at, the hoodie guy. And then you now have video released after the grub bus video that he was actually walking with the 2 victims to the grub bus. And at the end of that video, of the grub bus video, you see that he walks off to the right of the camera and the girls go around the corner to the left. So he went in opposite directions. So you can't say where he went after that. You can't say how he knows them, if he knows them. You don't know if he knows where they lived. You don't know if he knows their actual government names. And that's been, you all have been using this boy as public enemy number 1 as a suspect when it shows him going in the opposite direction. And that's also been mentioned in news commentary, I believe I brought yesterday, that you see the guy going in a totally different direction. Who's to say he didn't live right across the street or around the corner? Who's to say he didn't walk around the corner to a parking lot, garage to get his car? That was a public street that the grub bus sat on. So you got to prove this guy knew them personally and where they live to have followed them home. What? Lied in wait for an hour or more to infiltrate the house. This is why you don't make accusations on watching a video, because the grub bus video didn't show that much footage in the beginning. And now, weeks later, you have another video released to the public showing that same alleged suspect to some people walking with the girls. So he didn't just walk 50 feet behind, stalking them. He was walking beside them. And don't you think if they didn't want him walking, they would have said something to him, such as, "Hi, we're okay. We don't need any assistance." Or could it be that Kaylee, if we believe she's the one with the stalker, she did have a stalker, and she asked this young man, "Do you mind walking with us to the grub bus until we get our ride home?" See, you don't know because you only got one glimpse of a conversation under camera in video number 2 that's now been released to the public. This is why you can't assume anything from a picture, a video, because you do not know the girls, the other 2 victims. You do not know who they've talked to, coincided with that night, that morning, who they talked to via cell phone, who talked to them while they were out in public, who talked to them at a frat party. If there was an altercation, verbal or physical, do not know who a stalker is. You hear in this commentary, she was close to her sister, never gave a name. Sister's never publicly spoken about a stalker. If she told about a stalker to Maddie or Xana, they're dead. So then that leaves the 2 remaining roommates. What was told to them? Do they know of a stalker? And if so, have they given the information to the authorities? vape shop manager, have you given all information to the authorities? The guy walking, Mr. Hoodie, have you given all information to authorities? And the rideshare driver, who has now come forward to speak to News Nation, have you given all information to authorities? That is my next commentary pertaining to this crazy, crazy case. And it's just getting out of control with one parent speaking and family members speaking pertaining to one victim, the most, which I find very interesting. No other relatives speak about the murders, anything, except for Mr. Gonsalves. And as I said, there's nothing wrong with him fighting for his child, because that is his child. But when you make accusations of people being inappropriate, calling somebody a coward, then saying, oh, it wasn't the police, it was the lawyer, then you should have specified that when speaking. Because every little thing said by anybody related to these victims, people watch and they dissect and they chop up every action, every word, every movement. They chop up what you don't say. Who has not come forward to just publicly talk about the kids, speak about the kids? Everything is dissected. Now we have a crazy TikToker pointing accusations at a professor who is now asking for a cease and desist order. Been warned 2 times. She's still making videos. People still running amok, trying to dissect these videos of the kids with this hoodie guy, throwing out accusations of an ex-boyfriend being the culprit. Don't you see there are different entities that could be the suspect? Because you don't know the kids. You don't know who they talk to. You don't know all of their friends. You don't know who were their enemies. You don't know who they made enemies with, who didn't like the kids. You have no idea. And just throwing out random people is irresponsible. One moment, please. The next commentary will be pertaining to the rideshare driver. Thank you for joining me. This is the vote. Thank you for your time. Happy holidays to everybody. Please be safe. The weather is very drastic at this moment. Outages, certain places. Please bring your pets in. Stay safe, everybody. Merry Christmas. Please check out my community page for movies to watch, programs. Check out The Queen in Mountain Magic Christmas, now playing on Peacock NBC, starring Willie Nelson and Dolly Parton. The Queen is an extra. I'm at the beginning of the movie. Thank you so much for your support. God bless all of you. I brought you commentary pertaining to a tribute of all victims. News Nation was the source. 40 days later, no answers, no peace. The Hill with guest Brian Enton. Accusations from a TikToker made against an Idaho University professor. That was Law and Crime Network. And my last commentary is by News Nation. Idaho rideshare driver comes forward. This is Banfield. Thank you for following the content.
Indeed ordered an Uber, and now the man who drove them is revealing exclusive details to us about that ride home and what the girls said in the back of that car. News Nation correspondent Alex Capriello is live tonight. He tracked him down. He joins me from outside the home in Moscow. That was a very difficult task. Tell me what you found out, Alex.
Yeah, I was able to find this rideshare driver. He's one of only about 4 here in the Moscow area. So I was able to track down that phone number and give him a call personally, speak to him. I asked him point blank, hey, are you the guy who drove Kaylee and Maddie home that night? And to his credit, he was very transparent, very honest, very open, almost immediately with me.
Well, understandably, he has said, Alex, that he is very concerned. It's a small community. He doesn't want to be on camera, but he was very revealing in what he told you about that ride home. Start there. What did the girls talk about in the back seat?
Well, he said that it was actually a rather innocent conversation from the beginning. You might remember that he picked up these two girls from that grub truck. It's the food truck that's located right in downtown Moscow. And really, he said that was the center of their conversation. The entire 5-minute ride home was about their mac and cheese carbonara that they were planning on splitting when they got back to the house. He said that he's picked them up in the past, not only these two girls, but Xana as well. And he said that in the past, they talked about boys and drama and college life, but not this time around. It was just a very normal, innocent conversation about their food and how they were going to share it when they got home.
So that's also revealing that he knew them. He had had them in the car multiple times before. This is a small town, so if they've taken an Uber a couple of times, it would be likely that he'd be the driver. He said, indeed, he knew them. He knew all three of them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He said that obviously as one of only about 4 rideshare drivers in this area, he picks up these girls a lot. And not to mention, we already know that this is so close to frat row. And of course, we've reported that this is a party house. So a lot of times students would come here. And so he said that Xana, that Kaylee and Maddie were no strangers to them. He's given them rides home from the bars, home from work, home from school. So he knows them. He has driven them before. But back again to this, he said that there was nothing out of the ordinary that night, that right now or in that moment, that it was just an innocent conversation. Of course, the frats were bumping on a Saturday night, but here at the house, it was quiet and he saw nothing out of the usual.
So as you reported earlier this week, Alex, the last thing that we heard on tape was the surveillance camera showing Maddie and Kaylee walking from the Corner Club bar to the grub truck. And the only thing we could hear was, Maddie, what did you tell Adam? And then Maddie responds, I told Adam everything. Was there any conversation in the back of the Uber car about Adam or the bartender? Because Adam turned out to be the bartender. Did you mention anything like that?
Yeah, actually, the rideshare driver said that he knows Adam. He knows he's a bartender, but Adam was not brought up once at all during that conversation. Again, no conversations about boys, drama, or any trouble. And as far as what the girls were feeling, he said they were not fearful. They weren't skittish in any way. But back to the food truck, also I asked him about that. Hey, you were right there. Did you see anything out of the ordinary there? And he said, no, it was a Saturday night at the food truck. A bunch of college kids hanging out, ordering their food before heading home. You know, I brought up another person. A lot of people have speculated about the hoodie guy he's been referenced as. He said he didn't see that guy. He has no indication that anything was wrong there at the food truck. And certainly during that entire rideshare home, no indication that anything was wrong there rather.
Okay, then what about the police? Because clearly I would have imagined the police have a lot more, machinery and technological ability than sometimes we do to track people down. I assume that the police would have found him and that they would have talked. What did he say about being able to tell everything he told you to the police?
Yeah, this was super interesting to me because he said that he didn't hear about the murders until the next day. And he realized, oh my gosh, these are the two girls that I had driven home and I've driven home in the past. And so he was stewing on that for a little bit, but he was the one who eventually turned himself over to the police by calling the tip line saying, hey, I was the one who drove these girls home. The police tells the rideshare driver that they already knew he was the driver, but even still, he was the one who called in himself and said, hey, I was that guy. That being said, when he did that, called the tip line, he turned over all of his GPS coordinates from that night, sharing that he went to Taco Bell after dropping the girls off and then went home. And so that's the reason why he was cleared almost immediately, never been named as a suspect or persons of interest, because all the data that he provided to the police proves that he was not there at this house at the time that these murders allegedly happened.
So the other question is, as you are standing almost, I imagine, in the same spot where they were dropped off, did he mention anything about the drop-off that was unusual? Anybody in the parking lot? Did he drive into the parking lot? Did he hear something, see something, pass anybody?
Actually, the only thing he said was that he heard the frats doing their normal partying, but everything else seemed quiet, seemed normal. There were no headlights. There was no one following him. He says he's got a great memory, and he would know whether or not anyone was trailing him or if there was anything suspicious at all. As far as the drop-off, he said that he brought them right up the street here on King Road and dropped them off here at the foot of the driveway. He never pulls actually into the driveway because he says, based on his training, he always wants to be able to have a quick getaway in the event that something bad happens to him, like he gets robbed on the side of the road. But he dropped them off here on King Road. He watched them get out of the car. He did not watch them physically go into the home, but he said that he trusted that they were going to be safe because he's driven them so many other times, and he knew that these two girls were together.
Thank you for watching. Go to News Nation now.
Banfield, News Nation, speaking with the reporter on the ground. So the rideshare has come forward, has not identified himself naturally for safety reasons. There are at least 4 rideshare drivers. Some have said that this is through the school. I do not know. I don't have verification on the who the rideshare driver is and if it's a personal rideshare or through the school system. But nonetheless, naturally, he's been cleared for now by law enforcement. He turned over all his information, GPS, to authorities once he found out that the girls were the victims in the homicides. And nothing was suspect to him. At the grub bus where he picked them up, he has a good memory. He didn't feel like he was followed. He's picked up these girls before for work, leisure activities, heard the frat house people partying, but nothing was out of the ordinary at the house. Let them out in the street. Did not pull up in the driveway because he doesn't do this for safety reasons. He wants a clear advantage out of the property. But some might question that because they are females and not watching them go up to the house. He said he did not watch them go in. But we do know they made it in because allegedly they died in a bedroom on the 3rd floor, Kaylee and Maddie. No discerning conversation during the ride, just talking about the food, what they were going to eat. And yes, the timeline has been put at 3 to 4 a.m. initially in this investigation. I do not know if they still have that timeline put down to a T. One would ask, how did they come up with that information? Is this from some type of what? Autopsy results have not been revealed. Toxicology, they won't reveal that because they feel like it doesn't have anything to do with the investigation as far as manner of death. But some people just want to know if the girls had imbibed alcohol, any type of drugs. Some people assume drugs was involved. Everyone was entitled to their opinion. But no release of what was in the bodies of the victims. Food, good point. Did they eat, not eat? And what is the exact time of death? What time were the victims killed? It's a very good question. And why was it put at 3 to 4? So one would wonder, how did they come to that assertion? I do not know. But nonetheless, News Nation has spoken with the rideshare driver. He turned over all his information to authorities. And so far, he has been cleared. Not made himself known to the public. And naturally, he has seen what has transpired and continuing on social media pertaining to the deaths of these kids. Why would he want to show his face? But you see, he spoke. And that's the point I made in my last video last week as far as the landlord, when somebody act like they didn't understand why I made that commentary. You can speak about a person without having to show your face. You can speak about the deaths of people and say, yeah, I knew them, I met them, but you don't have to show yourself on camera. You can give your condolences about the dead, not show yourself on camera. I didn't think that needed to be explained during a live stream, but obviously I had to clarify that. That people give public statements all the time pertaining to death, and they do not show themselves. And as you see, the rideshare driver has decided to come forward because I guess he felt like it's only a matter of time somebody would ping who I am, and let me go ahead and speak up and let them know I turned over information. To my knowledge, I'm not a person of interest. Because the way people are digging and trying to find this and that and who did what. Some of you have no problem with implicating just anybody with a pulse in this crime. All the different jacks, now a professor. So I am shocked that nobody was dwelling on the rideshare driver. Not to give anybody ammunition to do so, but why not? You've accused everybody else. You've accused the family. You've accused the cartel, the neighbors, anybody that spoke up. This is why sometimes it's best that you don't say anything. You go to the authorities, but you don't speak publicly or give a statement, because social media, which let's just say people, because people make social media, they're not mentally stable. And I'm coming to see that a lot of people, to me, you're no different than the killer. And I can say that because, as someone said earlier in the commentary that I played, the female that's accusing the professor of improprieties with the victim and murder won't stop talking. And she acts as if she knows for sure this woman has something to do with the murders. And she's been sent order, desist, cease and desist, and she still won't stop. So what is your problem? And you all wouldn't even know these people if, one, you had never seen a Grub Bus video. If you've never seen their pictures on social media, TikTok, Facebook, you would have no idea that they were related to these kids, dated them, friends with them, nothing. And frankly, I would be very leery even speaking about these kids on social media as not to become a target as the murderer. Now, if you choose to want to talk about these kids and you give up any commentary that's deemed negative, you should know they're going to come for you and be digging in all your social media profiles and anybody affiliated with you and anybody that like anything you like. Oh, they're going to their Facebook pages and IG pages, and here comes the daggers. And in the end, people need to realize that you're not an investigator. It does not matter that you are a podcaster. You are partnered with YouTube. You've decided to talk about a true crime case. You're not an investigator. You are not a reporter. You have not been hired by the state's attorney's office to investigate the crime. You are not a detective. You're not a state police official. You're not the FBI or the CIA. And the behavior that some of you are exacting is borderline sadistic. And some is sadistic. Because you had a YouTuber making up fake audio to get likes and views and attention. And I knew before that video was released and watching one of his videos that he was not rap tight. And I can say that because I watched the title of the videos. I watched his behavior while having a live stream. And I knew something wasn't right with him. And I never went and made a video about him. I never talked about him in a live stream or said, hey, I watched such and such name and there's something off with this YouTuber. I kept it to myself because I knew time would tell on itself. And it did. Another YouTuber decided to out him for fraudulent audio pertaining to the night of the crime. And then I said something about it in a live stream to say, I already knew something was off with that character because all I had to do was listen to his content. And he's one of those that jumping on the bandwagon of anybody's name brought up, I'm going to ride that person's name when you don't even know the person. You don't even know the kids. So you can't say who killed the kids because look how many people they have interacted with just in one night. A few. You have no idea about the other people that were at the Grub Bus. You have no idea about anybody that was at the bar. You have no idea who they came in contact with earlier in the day, where they went earlier, where they went the day before, if there was indeed a stalker, if somebody was stalking them, their whereabouts in and around the house. You don't know. That is the reason why now you have information pertaining to a white Elantra, because perhaps somebody saw something on their camera that piqued their interest as odd, and they turned it over to authorities. Whether it was week 1, week 2, the point is they turned it over. And you don't know who's calling the police. You don't know who's giving tips to the police. 10,000 plus tips. Half are probably fraudulent and just from gossip, social media gossip. And I'd like to say that too before I check out of here. If you are somebody calling in tips from gossip from social media and YouTube, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. You have no right to be wasting these people's resources, because they have now at least 60 agents working on this case alongside state police and Moscow Police Department. And if you are calling the police department and the FBI with gossip, once again, you're despicable, because you have no right to be wasting the resources. The FBI was called in, state police immediately. So nobody can say they dropped the ball there. Now, you may have a problem with the FBI not taking the case. That's up to Moscow to hand it over, not the FBI. And maybe that's what is the issue with the parent or parents. They prefer that the FBI take the case. But I got a feeling that even if the FBI took the case, you still would be complaining about not getting information. And the FBI most definitely is not going to share any information with the general public about an investigation. So I still believe Mr. Gonsalves and his family would be utterly disappointed, even if the FBI had this case and they were the lead. See, anger can bring about many problems. And the one thing you do not want to do is anger the people who are investigating the crime. Because in the end, they may want to talk to you about something, but you are at odds with them, and it will make for a very dire situation in trying to speak with you and get information out of you. So I would not burn the bridge with Moscow State Police or the FBI. I would wait to hear from them to see what they have to bring forward, and if indeed they need to ask you anything. Exactly. We do not know if anything done that day led to their death. That is the gist of the story. That some of you are judging a grub bust video, watching the actions of somebody in the video as suspicious, when in the end, the person walked off in a different direction than the girls. And if you had paid attention to the video, you would have seen that he went to the right of the screen and they went to the left of the screen. But that wasn't good enough for you. And now we have a crazy TikToker throwing allegations against a professor at the school heinously. And she's now hired a lawyer and been warned 2 times, and she's still making videos. And as they said, YouTubers still putting people in their headline videos. That's to draw attention. It's sensationalism. I know, I've done it. But in this case, I said I will not bring forward any allegations against anyone because there are too many moving parts. And when I found out that there were 4 victims, I knew not to accuse anyone of murder because there are too many victims. And when you do not know the victims, you do not know their attitudes, their dispositions. You do not know who they were friends with. You do not know what they were into. You do not know who they made enemies with. You do not know their temperaments. How can you decide on who killed them? You can't. So there's no point in pointing fingers at anybody when you have 4 separate entities, 4 separate lives, 4 separate individuals. The killer could be anybody. And what will be interesting, if and when detectives find the killer, it's some random bloke that nobody knew a damn thing about. Had no relation to the victims. Just saw them out, maybe saw them on a social media page, and became fascinated and or irritated with the victims. possible person known to the victims? Could be. Somebody in their inner circle? Could be. Motive? Anything. Importance? Hell no. Because there's no reason to have killed these kids. And people do heinous things every day. People say not so nice things every day. People accuse people of things every day. But do you have the right to kill them? Over gossip, speculations, innuendos, allegations. That's why I said, you do not know the kids. So you don't know who the perpetrator is. And until you know who the children are, there's no way you will ever know who the perpetrator is. Do they have a profile of the suspect? I do not know. Do they have a person of interest, suspect in mind? I do not know. Will they ever reveal a suspect in mind? I do not know. What is so important about the white Hyundai Elantra that it is still on the table? What was seen with this car that made someone call in a tip? Something. And that's why I said, behind closed doors, you have no idea what law officials know, what they have found through GPS tracking, cell phone data, apps, text messages, drop calls, texts that weren't sent, texts that weren't received. See, you have no idea. You don't know what's been found on CCTV footage, video footage, neighbors' cameras, doorbell cameras. They could actually know a lot, but they have decided not to say anything because they've already had to backtrack, target, non-target, stalker being introduced, but then no proof of a stalker, a coroner giving commentary to the public that some deemed inappropriate, a coroner speaking to an underage child about information of the deaths, which was inappropriate, family having disagreements pertaining to the handling of the investigation, upset that alibis were not introduced, which we already know that would be inappropriate for the police to throw out people's alibis, because then you would be implicating those people to be stalked and doxxed by the general public. So I don't understand why the family would even think that would be appropriate to tell that. Because to me, that's heinous. People are already throwing people under the bus. So you want the police to now give out everybody's alibi, 200 plus people, tell all 200 people who are been interviewed, give all the 200 people's alibis, and wait to see those people be doxxed and harassed. Oh, they said you were the alibi, but I don't believe it. How would that make any sense? So grieving or not, that would not be right. And I have to say that during this live stream. That would make no sense to publicly give out anyone's alibi, because that will then aid to more stalking and doxing and accusations of any potential person of interest, suspect, their alibis. I don't understand how anybody would think that's appropriate. So a lot of information in this case that has come forward by family members, accusations, speculations, it's just atrocious and it's sickening, and I'm not participating in it. I will not participate because these children were brutally killed. And there comes a time when you have to own your part in the role that you play. So I say this queen will not be participating in any dagger throwing of anybody brought up, because there are possibly a slew of people who know these children and their names have not been implicated as suspects. So why pick and choose random people to say that they are the killer? That's not right. And if you're engaging in that type of behavior, you should know that it could come back and bite you in the ass, because you wouldn't want it done to you. And we have seen with so many true crimes where people assume somebody was guilty of murder, harming a person, and it was a faux crime, such as the Sherry Papini case. Prime example. There may have been people who thought her husband did something to her, because they always work from the inside out in a case. And she had orchestrated her own alleged kidnapping, lied to police, FBI. They investigated this case for about 5 years, which I don't understand why it took so long. But nonetheless, when they gathered the information, found the person she was with, he confessed to the orchestrated crime. She still did not want to own her part in orchestrating her own kidnapping. So now you see why you can't assume you know anything about the victim or the perpetrator. Many people have gone missing, found deceased. Once again, people suspected their lover, their mate, their husband, their wife, and they did not kill the person. Somebody else did it. Some random person or somebody that knew the victim. You cannot always assume it is a husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, lover, ex. And accusing these people can cause these people harm, ruin their lives. They could lose their job. They could lose where they live. All because you thought they are guilty. And some of you are not realizing that you're causing these people harm, because what if all these people you have thrown under the bus as suspects lost their job, lost their housing? What do you care? He looks guilty. He sounded guilty. He was acting guilty. I know he did it. How do you know he did it? He didn't tell you he did it. Why would he tell you he did it? Yes, and they could harm themselves as well. And we learned that with Madoff's son. Madoff had swindled millions of dollars out of investors, people he knew, people who trusted him, and his son ended up killing himself. And they said that the son allegedly was not involved in any of the crimes of swindling, defrauding investors. But maybe the son knew something. Maybe the son felt accused. Maybe he was actually investigated and he knew that he would be implicated. Who's to say? We don't know, because he's dead. But the point is, you do not know the mind of people. And you have to ask yourself, why would someone kill themselves if they weren't investigated in the crime? Because perhaps maybe he did know something. Perhaps he was involved. Perhaps he felt accused. We will never know, unless the government can bring forth information that the son had involvement in the defrauding with his father. But that's the point I'm making with these said cases. Papini orchestrated her own kidnapping. People may have thought the husband was involved. Allegedly, he did not. Madoff's son kills himself. Some may think he had involvement. Some may think he couldn't accept the scrutiny of people thinking maybe he had something to do with it. So you don't know. Casey Anthony's prime example. Many people assume she killed her child, but 12 members said the state didn't prove that she did. Her attorney Baez gave up every possible reason that somebody else did it. And to this day, nobody else has been arrested for the murder of her child. And she's free and still wreaking havoc after the fact. You see, each case is different. Each case a different outcome. Each case had an assumption and speculation. And to this day, people still speculate on each crime, throwing out his or her opinion of the given information. All I can say is pray that you are never accused of killing your child. Pray that you're never accused of being implicated in defrauding people of money. And pray nobody has accused you of murdering 4 college kids. Because now people in each case, I'm sure have been implicated in the crime. Somebody's been accused of killing a child. Somebody's been accused of having knowledge of it. Somebody's been accused of knowing of somebody defrauding somebody or helping in the fraud. Somebody's been accused of killing a person or killing kids or killing an individual or having knowledge of the crime and not reporting it or telling the truth. Do you want to be one of those people implicated in a crime, accused of a crime, knowing you had no involvement or knowledge thereof, thereafter? And how would you feel if you looked up and there was a YouTube video that you allegedly killed somebody? You're the suspect, but you know you didn't kill anybody. And now you feel like you need to vindicate yourself and go to Facebook, TikTok to make a video to say, I didn't kill anybody. Yes, I know them, but I didn't kill them. How would you feel? People sending you messages through Facebook Messenger, IG, to accuse you of killing somebody. Now you have to block people all day long that are trying to message you. God forbid they're riding by your house, your apartment, gawking, stalking, looking, taking pictures, commenting on your social media pages that you're the killer. How would you feel? I don't think you would feel too good. So if you don't want it done to you, then you shouldn't do it to somebody else. And as I said, I am a commentary channel. I've given my public opinion on said situations and allegations against people and said charges. Could I have been wrong in my commentary pertaining to the allegations? Possibly. But I give my opinion pertaining to the evidence. And I use the word allegedly. And if you did, then I give my opinion pertaining to if you did the said act. I want to thank you for joining me. Prayers to the family, the community, the friends, staff members of the university, the townspeople, LE, State Police, FBI, helping aid this investigation. Thank you for your time. Prayers to their families, because crime doesn't stop because it's Christmas. And sadly, somebody will be hurt today, tomorrow, because the devil is busy and he doesn't care that it's Christmas, Christmas Eve. Praying for justice for the Idaho 4. This is a horrible time of the year for these family members. Horrible time for those who've lost loved ones. A time that many people are depressed because of the deaths of others and just depression in general, or not being financially stable, secure, not having solid friendships, family members, relatives, good courtships. So this is a time to be thankful and ponder. Try to focus on the good in the world and not the bad and what you don't have. And sometimes it is hard. But know that somebody today didn't wake up. Somebody will not be seeing Christmas. Somebody is in need of a home, a house, a car. Somebody's homeless right now. And the weather is destructive right now. Below zero in many places. Some people probably don't have adequate water. I know my kitchen sink water, cold water, stopped. For some reason, they're rationing out the heat and water sources, I believe, here in the general area through TVA. And fortunately, as cold as it is in this domain where I am, heat running, somebody doesn't have a place to sleep. Someone doesn't have covers to cover under. And I feel sorry for anybody right now who does not have a solid place to live. A reason to be thankful. And the fact that you are alive today and you can watch this live stream and hear it, a reason to be thankful. You wake up and see Christmas tomorrow, a reason to be thankful. So know that 4 people won't be celebrating Christmas tomorrow. And maybe you should use a little kindness in the commentary pertaining to the Idaho 4 and any entities brought up in pertaining to those kids. Please be safe. Bring in your pets. Safe shopping today. Please stay warm, bundled up. If you can do something kind for someone in this dire weather, please take them something to eat. A blanket, a cover, a robe, slippers, hat, scarf, gloves. Maybe somebody needs an extra heater, bottled water. Pay it forward. Pass the baton, because everybody needs help along the way. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $McGanty129, Cash App. All stickers and chats are welcome during my live streams. Thank you all for the donations. Thank you for the stickers and chats. God bless all of you. You've been listening to The Vault. Merry Christmas.